We're following breaking news. It involves migrants in the city and Mayor Adams announcing one of the largest migrant shelters in New York City, Randall's Island, is set to close down by the end of February. The reason is that the influx of asylum seekers into the city has dramatically dropped. The city says only 700 asylum seekers arrived in the city last week, marking the 14th consecutive week of decline. The largest tent structure at the site has already been taken down. Mayor Adams says that over the coming months, remaining occupants will be transferred to other migrant shelters.
Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Wow. Turns out the migrant crisis is suddenly fixed now that we are just a few weeks away from Election Day. But it's pretty pathetic to watch how the media is trying their best to help out Kamala Harris. President Trump was right all along. There were no need for ridiculous bills in Congress. That, for the record, we're offering Americans and their security a few $1 million in contrast to hundreds and billions of dollars to other countries overseas. The sad reality is that the damage has been done. And this is the essence of corruption. Speaking of corruption, it is time for the Donkey of the Week. Can you believe that Chicago spent over $80,000 to renovate and furnish the office for the First Lady Johnson? And this comes as Chicago is facing a nearly $1 billion budget deficit.
As the city of Chicago grapples with a massive budget shortfall, NBC5 Investigates has uncovered records showing that the city spent $80,000 renovating a single office to be used by Mayor Johnson's wife, the First Lady of Chicago.
The receipts show that city workers did much of the labor and billed the city for that work.
These renovation or redecorating costs, well, the mayor says won't bankrupt the city, come at a time when Chicago is facing a huge financial hole and weighing all options, including potential layoffs, to make up for this deficit. Chicago's financial challenges raise questions about why the city spent more than $80,000 renovating this office in the Cultural Center for First Lady Stacey Johnson. Invoices obtained by NBC5 Investigates show the work began in room 306 as early as February and continued through August, with city workers, including painters, carpenters, and electricians, clocking more than 350 hours of time, billing the city for more than $25,000 in labor costs. Invoices also show more than $11,000 went to a vendor to replace tile and carpeting. Another invoice shows more than $43,000 was spent on furniture alone. We uncovered these records through a series of public records requests that we filed weeks ago. We told the mayor's office we had questions about this on Tuesday, giving them more than 24 hours to prepare for these questions. I'm wondering if you could help define what is the role of the First Lady in your administration, and how do we justify spending upwards of $80,000 to redecorate an office for her and staff?
Did you see that swallow? The question was like, hey, so what is the First Lady's role in your administration, and how is she going to help this $1 billion budget deficit? And he's like, wow, Johnson, you are a corrupt, pathetic clown.
Define what is the role of the First Lady in your administration, and how do we justify spending upwards of $80,000 to redecorate an office for her and staff in our current financial situation?
So the Cultural Center has always been a location for dignitaries. Every First Lady has had office space, there. Renovations for my office or any other office is standard procedure.
Is there any concern about optics of spending $4,000 on a desk or $4,000 in club chairs at a time when the city is in this sort of budget hole?
Yeah, the purchase of a desk is not going to change the financial structural damage that has been in place for a very long time. So this is why we ask, and I mean this respectfully, we ask far more profound questions than that. We ask, how do we make sure that the structural damage that's been created over the course of decades, that we reroute the rivers, if you will, to make sure that it gets to the places where there's dry land. And that's what we're doing.
Johnson voiced displeasure with our questions, but they were born out of these receipts, which show an order for this executive chair costing more than $2,200, a desk labeled for the First Lady running more than $4,400, another staffer's desk $4,600, and 2 club chairs costing more than $8,000.
The question wasn't necessarily about just the dollar amount, but about the optics of that. We just had a very contentious council meeting, so I'm just wondering if you're concerned about that optics.
So I've been mayor for 17 months, and you have a question about how I feel about optics? Just go back and review the tape. If I were to allow my leadership to be based on someone's opinion of me, it would be a derelict of duty. I never question my position to invest in people. I don't do this for optics. I do this to transform lives.
And while not uncommon for First Ladies to have a role or an office in the Cultural Center, a spokeswoman for the Larry Lightfoot's administration told me that they did not do any major renovations or redecorating to that room during her term.
What a total disaster. Imagine spending over $80,000 on someone that is useless to the city of Chicago. Wow. Brandon Johnson, no doubt you're the donkey of the week. Obviously, he doesn't care about the optics. That's a typical extreme leftist leader. He's running the city into the ground. He allowed the city to be invaded without proper vetting and loves to play the victim card. Well, let's move on to the news that some migrant shelters are being closed in Chicago and New York, but don't be fooled. They are still spending billions of dollars in migrant assistance. Let's get started.
The city and state continue to close migrant shelters. The latest one to go, a state-run shelter in Little Village at 27th and Pulaski.
The former CVS-turned shelter housed hundreds of new arrivals.
In a few weeks, this state-run temporary shelter will be no more. Right now, there are around 150 people living there. The state says if any of those people wish to stay within the shelter system, they'll relocate them to some of the 3,000 beds across the city right now. As the flow of new arrivals slows, slowly the city and state are closing shelters. This after President Biden issued an executive action barring migrants who cross the southern border unlawfully from receiving asylum here in the U.S.
That has led to a decrease in folks arriving at the border.
Eda Randall works for the Resurrection Project. For years, they've been helping new arrivals settle in the U.S.
What we're also seeing is that as immigrants are arriving, they may already have family here and they can go and stay with family.
She explained another reason why the shelter demand is lower.
That's the best network for immigrants to be able to come, learn about, what it's like to live in Chicago.
City data shows there are still 15 total active shelters in Chicago, including the Little Village location. Just over 5,000 people are currently staying in them, while there's a capacity for much more than that. The city also plans to close another shelter in Hyde Park by the end of October. Data published today shows Chicago has spent $541.3 million on the migrant mission between August of 2022 and today. Much of that went to favorite healthcare staffing. CBS News Chicago looked into the contract and found the city extended their agreement with the company until April 22nd, 2025. They increased that agreement by $100 million.
Amazing. Truly amazing. Chicago has spent over $500 million in migrant assistance. And now they're closing some shelters because Joe Biden's executive order is working so well. I wonder why he didn't do it before. Oh, that's right. We are very close to what is perhaps the most important election in American history.
Now, this shelter is expected to officially close November 3rd. The state says they're still funding 2 others and expect to end that funding by June 30th of 2025.
But they are still extending those contracts and even spending an additional $100 million. And Chicago, do you know what your leaders are up to right now?
Other news tonight, Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson are both on international trips. Pritzker's in Japan, Johnson's in England. There will be a close eye on whether there are benefits from these travels as both the city and the state face very challenging budgets.
These photos, posted by the president and CEO of the Illinois Hotel and Lodging Association, has been with Governor Pritzker in Tokyo. Pritzker's chief of staff posted photos too, noting the trip to Japan took months of planning for 4 days packed with meetings, including speaking at an event with 100 Japan-based companies. Pritzker taking with him top General Assembly leaders and officials from Northwestern University as well as the University of Chicago. There are also top officials from a dozen major Illinois corporations.
Got to go quick, you all, quickly, because I got to get on a plane there.
Mayor Brandon Johnson left for London after Wednesday's city council meeting. After a week of asking for details of this trip, the city released a statement that says there are 8 people joining the mayor. They all either work for World Business Chicago, the city's corporate arm, or they work directly for the mayor. No names of businesses they're meeting with were released. Johnson's trip coincides with the Chicago Bears game on Sunday in London. Earlier this week, here's how he defended the timing.
The governor went to Tokyo to attract business. The mayor of Chicago is going to London to attract business. And while I'm there, I'm going to root for the Chicago Bears.
While in Japan, Pritzker also met with former Mayor Rahm Emanuel, now the ambassador to Japan. Pritzker also announced a more than $20 million Illinois expansion that will create 100 new jobs. The mayor's office suggests he will announce the name of a London-based company expanding in Chicago. Sources say it's a digital insurance business, and as of yet, the mayor's office will not say how many jobs it will create. Johnson has delayed his budget address for 2 weeks, and the trip coincides as the Chicago public schools are in turmoil.
Our school system is in crisis. He's going to take a vacation to London. Boy, it must be really nice.
We, of course, asked for photos from the mayor's office about the London trip. So far, none have been sent to us. This is not the first controversial trip for the mayor. Perhaps you remember last spring, he traveled to Los Angeles for a conference that coincided with the Grammy Awards. That trip cost taxpayers at least $10,000.
Why would he send photos? He doesn't owe any of us an answer. The DOJ has been compromised. He's backed up. Otherwise, he would have been investigated. Both of them would have been investigated and by now behind bars. Now let's go to New York City.
Breaking news, in fact, on Randall's Island, where the city now says the huge migrant shelter there is set to close within months.
Behind me, you can see soccer fields. That's on the southeastern tip of Randall's Island, but the southwestern tip, the giant white tent-like structure behind me, that's part of one of the largest migrant shelters that was set up more than a year ago. At its peak, more than 3,000 asylum seekers were sleeping in this tent, still more than 2,000 now, but there's been enough of a decline in the migrant population citywide that the city today confirmed they are closing it down. One of the largest symbols of the asylum seeker crisis is now in its final months.
We're going to be able to close that site by the end of February.
Deputy Mayor Ann Williams-Isom telling News 4 a steady decline in the arriving migrant population has changed the reality, allowing the giant tent facility on 4 city-owned athletic fields at the southern tip of Randall's Island to close.
I do think we are, and I don't knock on something saying we think that we're out of the crisis phase of this.
The current migrant population is 60,600, down from an all-time high of 69,000 in January. That's a 15% drop. And weekly arrivals peaked at 4,000 last year. Last week, only 700 asylum seekers arrived, marking 14 straight weeks of decline.
Yeah, that's the infamous Randall's Island migrant shelter in New York City. You remember? We've heard of many violent incidents in that shelter. Even the Devil's Daughter No surprise, right? The devil's daughter was living there at some point before she moved into her beautiful hotel room in New York City. But she was there before, and she was interviewed by Telemundo when that viral video of the cops detaining a migrant, and then some migrants around them were throwing chairs at them, and it was chaos. Well, she was interviewed about it, and you can see right there she loves the attention. She was describing what happened, and this was 7 months ago, okay? That was 7 months ago. But just to give you an idea of what type of shelter we're talking about here.
What has changed is the inflow into New York and to other cities. That happened because of the executive order that the White House and the president was able to do.
But 14 other city shelters will stay open, including the Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown, which is the primary intake center, Floyd Bennett Field, and Creedmoor in Queens. The city has spent billions of dollars keeping the program afloat, says the mayor's chief of staff, Camille Joseph Varlach.
Randall's is sort of the first big HERC that we're going to be closing, but there are several others that are on the list where we're trying to reduce the census because we know it's been challenging in communities.
Can you say which others are on the list?
Paul Street is a classic example.
That shelter in Brooklyn has no closing date yet. Advocates for asylum seekers learning of the closure of Randall's say challenges remain.
The number one challenge is that there is not proper case management.
Oh no. Oh no. Not Power Malu again. Oh. Why can't Power Malu just get all of these migrants and have them live with him? Wouldn't that be a better idea? I'm sure he wouldn't be happy about that. He wants the taxpayers to pay for everything. Power Malu. He's like, I see him on almost every single report when it comes to these shelters, but he's an advocate. I wonder how much money he's making out of this.
In these shelter systems, there's no people that are actually following up with the clients and making sure that they get their letters and their mail because they're constantly being moved around.
But let's not get too excited, guys. Just like Chicago, New York City is looking to expand and renew some contracts.
New York City planning to continue using pricey Manhattan hotel rooms to house some of the city's 200,000 plus migrants. A new contract would make 14,000 rooms available, costing taxpayers over $300 each per day. That's on top of the $2.3 billion spent on housing migrants just since 2022. Vicky Palladino is a New York City councilwoman who opposes the plan. She joins us now. Vicky, why is New York City doubling down on taking resources from its own residents and giving them to illegal migrants?
You know, we've been talking about this now for 2 years, and it's almost like we're pressing the reset button. Once again, now we need more. What does that mean? We got 150 right now New York City hotels being taken over by migrants. The cost is $2.3 billion. No, it's closer to $5 billion. Wow. So, you know, don't forget the debit card that goes with that. It's a free pass. 14,000 more rooms. Now, also, let's think about this. There's been a little lull here in bringing up the migrants and the what's going on here with the illegals and what it's costing the city. We've kind of taken a bit of a hiatus because other things have been deflecting from the point that this problem still very much exists. And it's only going to grow. There's no end in sight. 14,000 more hotel rooms. That means they're going to branch out now more so into the outer boroughs, quite possibly to more independent hotel owners, making them millionaires who are struggling, making them millionaires overnight. Yeah. My city council doesn't even think this is enough. Wow. This isn't. So the fact that it's killing tourism, killing our economy. We're looking at a $10 billion bill. And Hochul's going to come down here and dictate to us what we should do? No. Absolutely.
Here's what the New York City Department of Social Services says in a statement to us, quote, while this is a new competitive solicitation, it will simply replace an existing emergency contract and not add 14,000 additional units on top of the existing capacity, while allowing DHS to continue to provide safe housing for newly arrived families and individuals as they work toward independence and the next step of their journey. I want to focus on that last part. Are those individuals who can't speak the language, have no roots here, are they independent now, tax-paying citizens, providing into the system as opposed to taking?
Absolutely not. That's the biggest fallacy we've got going. Okay, now, let's take 100% of them and let's knock off maybe 20% that are actually looking for jobs to be able to work. But now what we have, they're driving around on these motor scooters and these motorized things, and they're doing delivery services in that. That's not the road. That's not the road to getting better or to making them advance in our society. We got kids who go to school who cannot sit in a classroom. I speak to my principals all the time. These kids are shifting and moving around because they've never had any kind of schooling. The language gap. We have one terrific school in my district that's failing now because they've got such a language barrier. They need Spanish in this particular school in order for the kids to pick it up. But they like I said, I don't see an end to this.
14,000 new hotel rooms, and they still deny it. So between them trying to show us how they're closing some shelters and signing new contracts, this just highlights two things: how inept and corrupt our government is, and that we are still under a terrible migrant crisis. Again, the damage has been done. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do not forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and share with everyone you know. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time. Oh no, there's Malu again. Is that Power Malu, right? Power. Malu, get out. Can we get Malu out too?